Welcome to the 2026 Point-in-Time Count Volunteer Training. The PIT date this year will be January 22nd, 2026. That is a Thursday. Here are some of the questions that the PIT count aims to answer, as well as the definition of the PIT count. The point-in-time count is an unduplicated count on a single night of the people in a community experiencing homelessness. The other way I like to explain it is that the PIT count is the minimum number of individuals experiencing homelessness in your community on a single night. There are four main reasons that we conduct the point-in-time count, represented here in this graphic. We conduct it for awareness, to advocate to local governments and raise community awareness, to understand the extent of homelessness by identifying the trends in homelessness over time and the characteristics of those experiencing homelessness locally, to secure funding, as the PIT count can be used for eligibility for COC and ESG federal funding, as well as to advocate for private or local government funds, and finally for engagement, as the PIT count allows us to develop personal relationships with those experiencing homelessness and create a shared sense of responsibility with various stakeholders. Here's a flow chart that demonstrates how our roles work together. This is a simplified chart on how we communicate with each other depending on the type of information. Just to give a quick overview, for most situations involving logistics, direct your questions to me. My contact information is at the end of this presentation, and if you have questions about community information, contact your PIT leads. Now for a quick overview of the count itself. This slide is meant to demonstrate the types of individuals you would survey for the PIT count. The count is broken down into two pieces, the sheltered count and the unsheltered count. We look for individuals residing in unsheltered locations such as the street, an outdoor encampment, and other places not meant for human habitation. We also look for individuals residing in sheltered locations such as an emergency shelter, domestic violence shelter, transitional housing, and hotels or motels paid for by an agency voucher. Again, please remember that the count involves you directly interacting with each person experiencing homelessness and conducting a survey with them. Now that we know who to count, I think it's important to highlight those that we do not count under HUD's definition of literal homelessness. We do not count individuals residing in permanent housing. This includes permanent supportive housing and rapid rehousing programs such as HUD-VASH and FEMA projects. We do not count those who are at risk of homelessness or in temporary living situations. This includes those at risk of eviction, doubled up with family or friends, hotels and motels paid for out of their own funds, foster care, sober living, halfway houses, as well as criminal justice or health facilities such as a jail or a hospital. Some of you in this training may work at a school or may be familiar with the homeless definition that is used by school districts. To help with confusion, I created this slide to explain the differences between who counts for the PIT count versus the parts of the school district definition that don't apply to the PIT. You will notice that on this slide I have highlighted several different phrases in red font. The parts in red font are the aspects of the school definition that do not fit into the PIT count definition. Those include children and youths who are sharing the housing of other persons due to loss of housing, economic hardship, or a similar reason, are abandoned in hospitals, or are awaiting foster care placement or substandard housing. So while these students may qualify as homeless with their school, they do not qualify as counting for the point-in-time count. Now we're going to talk about the unsheltered PIT. The unsheltered PIT, often referred to as the street count, is a count of the individuals who are residing in places not meant for habitation. The locations that we can consider for the unsheltered count include abandoned buildings, bus, train stations, and airports, parks, streets, sidewalks, tents, encampments, under bridges and overpasses, and vehicles such as cars, vans, and RVs. PIT leads should create a map or list of common areas where people can be found. This can be used to help inform volunteer routes. Prepare for the unsheltered count by creating your map zones and areas that teams of volunteers will cover during the count. Seek input from your PIT count committee, community partners, and people with lived experience when mapping your survey locations. You may need to update your maps closer to the date of your count, as locations frequented by people experiencing unsheltered homelessness may change. We recommend looking for hotspots 1 to 2 weeks before the count. Your PIT leads will start the process for known location mapping. However, they will require your knowledge and expertise to ensure that the list is as comprehensive as possible. Please do not hesitate to reach out to your PIT lead to brainstorm ways that you can help them update their list with any locations you are aware of. You may notice that you will start seeing more locations where individuals experiencing homelessness are residing as you are driving around on your normal routine. This is the type of information your PIT leads will need, and I would encourage you all to get specific insight into how they would like for this information to be documented and maintained in the months leading up to the count. Please make sure to visit hotspot locations regularly in the months leading up to the count, as these areas might change. Communicate these changes with your PIT lead. The safety of PIT leads and volunteers are our highest priority, so please read over this list prior to the night of the count. This list is specifically geared towards those doing the unsheltered count. However, many of the tips still apply to the sheltered count as well. It is always important to be mindful of the population that we are surveying and to understand the situation that they are in. Homelessness can cause a great deal of psychological and physical trauma, so always be respectful of them as you would be to your own neighbors. Do not wake people up. Do not put yourself in a situation that makes you uncomfortable. Don't promise things you can't deliver. Don't share confidential information or deviate from the survey. The first two items on this list are scenarios in which you would do an observation survey. The main takeaways are that you should be respectful, calm, sincere, and prepared. While you are unlikely to experience dangerous situations, it is important to have a safe place in case de-escalation is required. Here are the 5 steps to completing the unsheltered survey. Make sure to start by identifying yourself and stating the purpose of the count. Remember to always obtain consent to the survey, and once you've obtained verbal consent to the survey, you may now begin to ask the screening questions to determine if the individual is eligible. If they are not eligible, thank them for their time and move on. If they are eligible, administer the survey questions and record their responses. Lastly, ensure that you thank the respondent for their participation and, if possible, provide them with donated items, care packages, information pamphlet, and resources. Here are some tips for the unsheltered count. Your PIT leads will be providing you a packet of information in advance of the count. It should include the map of your locations, day of count checklist and cheat sheet, volunteer interviewing guide, and any other resources they feel like you will need. If you have not received these items, please reach out to them directly. You will also find some of these materials available on the THN website under the Volunteer Materials section, which is hyperlinked on this slide. Additionally, you should plan on what clothing and shoes that you'll be wearing, as well as ensuring that your cell phone or smart device is charged to collect surveys throughout the entirety of your shift. Also, please prioritize time to practice. Practice your introductory script and make sure that you have spent time reading through the survey questions out loud so you are familiar with the phrasing and the order of the questions. The scenario-based training will provide more detailed instruction on how to approach those experiencing homelessness, as well as the types of script ideas you can use. The more comfortable you are with the survey, the more this interaction will feel like a conversation as opposed to a survey. The closer this interaction mirrors a conversation, the better your results will be, and the more meaningful the entirety of the process will be. Finally, if at any point through this process you have questions or concerns, please reach out to your PIT lead. If you do not receive a timely response, you're always more than welcome to reach out to me, and I will do my best to assist you. Now let's talk about sheltered PIT planning. For the shelter count, we survey people residing in emergency shelters, which include cold weather shelters, domestic violence shelters, and hotels or motels paid for with agency vouchers, as well as transitional housing. In order to be considered an emergency shelter or transitional housing project, they have to meet the following 3 criteria. 1. The primary intent of the project is to serve literally homeless persons. 2. The project verifies homeless status as part of its eligibility determination. And 3. The actual project clients are predominantly homeless. To give a more detailed explanation of the location definitions, here are the HUD definitions of emergency shelter and transitional housing. Emergency shelters are any facility where the primary purpose is to provide temporary shelter for people experiencing homelessness in general or for a specific population that do not require occupants to sign a lease or occupancy agreement. Transitional housing is designed to provide homeless individuals and families with interim stability and support to successfully move to and maintain permanent housing. Just a quick note, for emergency shelters, our recommendation is that you conduct surveys when people are checking in for the night. To help you identify the list of shelter locations, please use the housing inventory count to determine which shelters have counted in the past. The visual at the bottom is meant to illustrate the connection between the PIT and HIC and how they work together to show the comprehensive picture of your community needs and your capacity to respond to those needs. If you know of any agencies that will be providing hotel or motel vouchers on the night of the count, please contact me immediately so we can discuss the process for conducting those surveys. Here is a Venn diagram to demonstrate the similarities and differences between the sheltered PIT and HIC. I won't go through each bullet point, but if I were to give you a summary, the key differences are that the point-in-time count requires individual surveys of each client residing in an emergency shelter or transitional housing program. Each survey takes approximately 25 to 40 minutes, whereas the HIC only requires you to fill out one form for each housing project your organization has, which amounts to about 10 to 20 minutes total. They are both required by HUD, happen at the same time, and I provide technical assistance for both. The PIT is driven by local leads with support from Texas Homeless Network, whereas the HIC is driven by Texas Homeless Network with support from local leads. I want to spend a little bit of time talking about the specific process for surveying survivors of domestic violence. To give you some context, the PIT count is only gathering information on those who are actively fleeing a domestic violence situation. The question is not asking if someone has ever experienced domestic violence. The question on this slide is the exact language in the PIT app. Here are some do's and don'ts around surveying DV survivors. Please make sure that your volunteers go over this list prior to the day of the count. Do not fill in the full name or the date of birth or the exact age of the survivor. You will provide their age range only. Please do not provide any identifying information in the notes section. Once you've gotten past the name and age questions, please continue filling out the rest of the survey with them. Here's a screenshot of the mobile app and what the beginning section of your survey should look like when you're surveying an unsheltered domestic violence survivor. Again, you will be filling out the entire survey with participants. You're only skipping the full name, date of birth, exact age, and demographic section. We recommend putting in initials for DV survivors and age ranges, but no other identifying information. If you are a volunteer who will be helping out with the sheltered count, please work with your PIT lead on establishing regular check-ins prior to the count. If you are not a staff member at the shelter where you will be surveying, please take note of any confidentiality standards that they have, as well as their visitor policies. Follow their instructions at all times and ensure that your PIT lead has introduced you to the staff you will be working with prior to the day of the count. Let's have a quick conversation about the importance of obtaining consent from participants. You are only permitted to conduct a survey if you have been given verbal consent to do so. You could not complete a survey if you have not obtained consent, or if you haven't physically laid eyes on the individual on the day of the count. If the individual wants to leave the conversation, stop the survey and submit it. If they revoke their consent and ask you to delete the survey responses, please do so. Absolutely do not try to convince, coerce, or persuade someone to participate in the survey. If you are unable to complete the sheltered or unsheltered surveys for the above reasons, you have the option of completing the observation survey. Observation surveys can be conducted in both sheltered and unsheltered locations. You will use the observation survey if someone is sleeping, you are unable to approach the individual, or if they do not consent to the survey. To conduct this survey, you must believe that they are experiencing homelessness. Do not complete a survey using intake forms or based off of previous interactions. You must see the person on the day of the count. We do not gather any personal information or make any assumptions about the person based on appearance, no matter the circumstances. This is a decision tree that was created for volunteers to help you determine which survey to choose. It is color-coded based on the survey type. The red and orange colors indicate decisions leading to the observation survey. The dark blue is for participants that are not eligible to be surveyed, which happens if the person reports to you they are not homeless. The purple is for unsheltered surveys. The green is for sheltered surveys. These are the overall guidelines for how to follow best practices when it comes to conducting the PIT count. Always obtain consent, express confidence and compassion, and prepare well in advance so you feel comfortable with the questions you will encounter. As for next steps, we recommend watching the mobile app training video next, registering for the PIT count at toxbos.pointintime.info, and work with your PIT leads to start mapping hotspot locations. There will also be a series of additional presentations posted to the website to help you engage those with lived experience, youth, veterans, and victim service providers. And there will also be additional refresher materials released in January of 2026. Please visit our PIT website to view those materials. Here's my contact information if you have any questions or need any additional help in the meantime. Thank you so much for everything you do, and this count wouldn't be possible without you. And as always, I cannot express my gratitude enough for each and every one of you. Thank you for watching.